Light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. In thinking over the way people address the subject of prayer, or the practice of prayer rather, there are so many different ways to pray. What I would say they all have in common across the whole spectrum of human religion is that it's communication between humanity and the divine. For some of my pagan friends, that may take the form of casting a spell. For someone else, it might be a time of meditation. For someone else, it might be numerous repetitions of a particular phrase that's regarded as sacred. For some, it's simply being quiet in the presence of God for whatever perception or experience that might bring. Some find God in the quietness, some find God in the music. I refer to them all as prayer simply because it's all about communication between humanity and the divine. In thinking about prayer, and in terms of what people pray for, my upbringing was mostly within Christian and especially Roman Catholic context. And so very often we would hear of intercessory prayer. For the pagans, an intercessory prayer would be some sort of spell or something that's designed to bring good fortune or health to someone. And pagan, Christian, whatever, the more ambitious prayers, I suppose you might say, though of course a lot of people chuckle about them, but I'm sure that's what a lot of people are praying for. Winning the lottery, getting a nicer, bigger house, a nicer car, some sort of blessing that has specifically a temporal or earthly sort of definition to it. I don't often hear people praying for all the intangibles, except in the amusing bumper sticker, God give me patience and I want it right now. Praying for the ability to love, praying for learning compassion, praying for peace in our world. Some of these are common prayers, but in terms of individuals who engage in practices of prayer, I don't hear these as often. Perhaps I'm just traveling in the wrong circles. But my point being, when we communicate with the divine, when we make our hearts and our minds known to God in whatever sense we understand God to be, I think quite often we overlook the really simple, basic stuff. God give me a good night's rest. For many people, the prayer of give us our daily bread is still a very real one. There are, even in this day of, or in this age of abundance in many countries around the world, there are still many, many places, even within those same countries, where people are going to bed hungry and people who don't have enough food. And so asking, give us this day our daily bread, is still a very heartfelt, important statement. It's not just a throwaway phrase. It's not just something we say to sound religious. It really is what we're asking for. In some ways, when I was growing up, I would hear of people directing their prayers to Santa Claus, not in the sense of kneeling down by their bed, asking Santa Claus to, do the things that they would ask God to do, but the one year in particular when economic and employment-related crises hit, there were reports all around my area of little kids, 7 and 8-year-olds, coming up to at the shopping malls to sit on Santa Claus' knee, and when asked, "What would you like for Christmas?" They would respond, "Could you get my daddy a job?" Things like that. And it was heart-wrenching that because of how deep and common the problems were, that the children were saying, "I don't want Christmas this year, I just want everything to be okay for my family again." And what could any Santa Claus department store Santa Claus say in that situation? But to me it brings up this reminder that there's a dailiness to life, and there's an awareness of the simple sorts of things that so often we take for granted and we overlook, especially during times of plenty and times of comfort. We don't realize how important it is to maintain hope, to have something to believe in, to have someone to love, and I don't mean just a life partner or a spouse or a husband or a wife, but to have a family to love, to have a community to which to belong. And so trying to bring awareness to this more basic level of life. And me growing up in a working class town in southern Wisconsin, and so often life was oriented around these basic sorts of, well, how do we deal with that? And having to improvise the solution. And as I was putting together my second album, I wanted to write a song that addressed some of this, reminding of humble beginnings and of how in the struggles and the ups and downs and whatnot, there would occasionally be people who would grow up and try to do everything they could to make sure that they escaped their basic childhood experience. If they became wealthy, suddenly they wouldn't have anything to do with their family anymore because they didn't want to remember the circumstances within which they were raised, or the hardship from which they sprang. I still remember it's the most common thing I mentioned to people in terms of what were the conditions in the house where I grew up. In the winter time, to me it was just a matter of fact sort of thing that every night when I went to bed I had to make sure that my sheets were not touching the glass of the window, because if they were, they would freeze to the glass by morning. And if I tried to make the bed, I'd risk ripping the sheet trying to get it off the glass, because that's how cold the window glass got. The sheets would literally freeze right to the window if they were touching. And the inside of the window would be covered with a 1/4 inch of frost. And that's just the way it was. I didn't think of it as being rich or poor or hardship or easy or comfortable or whatever. It was just the way it was. That was my home. That was my bedroom. Or rather, the bedroom I had to share with my brother. We had 7 people in a house that was possibly 1,400 or 1,500 square feet, which I guess it depends on who you talk to. Some people would say that was extremely crowded, and then again, there's lots of people who live in more cramped quarters than that. We just, it was all we knew. But in trying to bring this sort of basic working class awareness to a song, when I was putting together my second album, I said, what we can all agree on is the basics of life. That if we have more, that's great, but at least let us have this much. And so this is a song I'd like to share with you, simply called Bless Us. As the sun fades and night like a blanket unfolds o'er the land and o'er me, I climb into bed, too many thoughts in my head, and close my eyes in order to see. In my dreams you ever are with me, and we talk of the struggles that be. I rest in your embrace and look up toward your face, and a whispered prayer send up to thee. Bless us with hope for tomorrow. Please bless us with love for today. In peace may we recall our yesterdays all, and know truth all along the way. I climbed out of bed just this morning with a plan of what this day would be. Then a telephone call with bad news changed it all, everything that I thought would be. I heard rain start to beat on the window. I heard thunder rumbling loud overhead. I hung up the phone, sat down and moaned, and whispered a prayer up to thee. Bless us with hope for tomorrow. Please bless us with love for today. In peace may we recall our yesterdays all, and know truth all along the way. All the memories of what I have been through, all those hard times I thought would kill me, for the man I've become because of each one, I can almost say just let it be. I don't need to forget all the sorrow, 'cause it's not everything I have known. Woven throughout the dark is a bright holy spark, so a whisper again goes to thee. Bless us with hope for tomorrow. Please bless us with love for today. In peace may we recall our yesterdays all, and know truth all along the way. And know truth all along the way. I think the nice thing for me about growing up was that I could finally get to the point where the memories were just memories, and somehow all the things that went wrong way back when don't really matter so much anymore, because I found other things that are more important, and I found ways that life got better. And during my college years, through some discount programs and such, I chose to engage in professional psychological counseling on several occasions. And I would meet with a psychologist each week and talk over what things were rattling around in my head and what I couldn't seem to make sense of. And I guess part of me always hoped he would give me the answer, but I don't know that any of them ever did. And in some situations, I think it would have been appropriate for them to do so, and appropriate to give me the answer, but it wouldn't be in a final way. It was simply that I said, here are all the pieces, I can't figure out how to put them together. And I'm sure some of those psychologists, for example, must have guessed that I might be gay. But for whatever reason, none of them would say so. But as I talked about of knowing since the time I was 4 that I was fundamentally different, and being this creative individual who just felt like a total alien in this small Germanic farming community, that somehow there was nothing I could do that would ever make me enough like other people to ever fit in. And feeling haunted in a sense by my true self, but I didn't know what the name of my true self was. From the time I was 4 till the time I was 25, or 26 actually. And I remember talking with one of the psychologists once and describing how, I don't know that my family was necessarily bad people in some extreme sense of the word, but my family was an extreme of non-communication. In the interest of not having arguments and getting along, we essentially weren't allowed to talk about anything that mattered, and which I suppose might explain why I talk only about things that matter ever since. But the problem with that I noticed was that we grew up a house full of strangers. We all slept in the same building, but nobody really knew each other at all. A couple occasions riding my bicycle home, I was even hit by a car, but I wasn't injured, so I got up and rode my bicycle home, and my parents were never told. Just to give an idea of how severe our non-communication was. I've been hit by a car twice and my parents don't know. I don't think they're watching this show, so who knows if they'll ever hear about it. But in any case, it was a bunch of people who really didn't know themselves, trying to avoid conflict, trying to avoid arguments, and never really knowing each other at all. And so I got a constant example of what was considered duty, but I don't know if there was ever any genuine love in my home. And I suppose one of the reasons love and wisdom are so extremely important to me now is to try to create the love that I felt I never received, rather than whining about not having a good role model or a good example or a good recipe to follow to make it happen. I've decided that with the rest of my life, since leaving my childhood home, that I wanted to put all the love into the world that I could to try to make the world into the loving place I always wished it would have been. But part of, as I was talking with the psychologist about trying to make sense of this gifted mind I'd been given, I frequently joke, but it's really true. I was questioning the meaning of life by the time I was 10. I was reading psychology books in my early teens, and on to theology books by my late teens, and reading the Bible through 15 times by the time I was 20, from cover to cover. And it's like I couldn't learn enough. In elementary school, I read about Arthurian knights and all sorts of big, thick novels, and I was totally fascinated by all that. But it was about the meaning that these people were able to put in their lives in spite of their circumstances. And as I was describing all my intellectual self-motivatedness, I suppose, and all the things I was feeling and noticing, one of the psychologists on one occasion looked at me and said, "Why are you still alive?" And I was kind of stunned by the question, and I thought about it, and I said, well, I guess in his experience, most people who report the kinds of things I report wind up committing suicide. But and for a while, I suppose that was suicidal, but I think at some point I left all that behind and life got better, and I didn't need to go back that way anymore. I think a lot of it had to do with getting to a point where I could simply accept that what happened, happened. That I didn't need to insist it didn't happen, or it wasn't what everyone says it was, I just looked at it, and I looked at it, I measured it, noted its details, and said, it was what it was. And the liberating thing, I guess, is that I'm not there anymore. Because apparently, in some subtle way, God did bless me with hope for tomorrow, so that I was stubborn enough never to give up and to keep going, and not ever accept that there wouldn't be a tomorrow for me. And I realized that at some point this body will wear out. This physical body is not immortal. The spirit will go on, but the body's not immortal. I accept that. But it doesn't need any help from me to get to that point. So in the meantime, I'm living life to the fullest in whatever way I can now, and keeping myself in good shape, because I want to enjoy life right down to the last sunset that I ever get to see. And it's so much easier to maintain than to recover lost ground. And I hear people who, quote, let themselves go, and they're not exercising, they're not doing whatever. And essentially what they're doing is self-sabotaging. They're taking the strength out of their own future by not investing in themselves today. And I guess looking at that from my basic working class upbringing, I suppose, to recognize that my body and my life are gifts from God in a sense, and that I honor the giver by making the most of the gift that I can, that, to live life in the best way I can, to take care of this body and not, my father was a chain smoker, but I've never gotten into smoking anything. Never got into illegal drugs, never been seriously drunk in my life, have no desire to be. What's the point in drinking so much that you don't remember what you did the next day? Like, ooh, that doesn't sound like much fun to me, but hey, to each their own. But somebody was teasing me once when I said all this and said, are you going for sainthood? That's what she said. And when I said, I don't even chew bubble gum because I don't like the feel of it in my mouth. And I said, no, my only religious conviction is I don't do neckties. Beyond that, it's just personal choice. Just to make light of, no, I don't wear neckties, but that's a whole other subject for another time, because it's just a personal silly thing. But to me, it wasn't that I was trying to live up to some standard. It was rather just that I wanted to be the best me I could be. And these are the personal choices I made that seemed like they would get me there. Or at least get me closer, get me in the right direction. But yeah, I still remember him asking, that psychologist asking me, so why are you still alive? And it's kind of stunned me because I never really thought of it that way. But I know that I'm very glad to still be alive, and I know there was no place in my small town upbringing that had, no place big enough for me, because very early on my spirit and my mind and my heart grew too big for this small town constraints. And but I can say that looking back, and there's so much yet to look forward to, because I certainly haven't arrived by any stretch of the imagination. But it's also that, how do I put this? Maintaining that connection with the face in the mirror. Maybe that's what this is all about. And looking in the mirror and maintaining connection with the face, with the person that is me, and understanding that that face and that person exists in relationship to someone or something that is greater than me also. That I exist in relationship to communities, to spiritual beings of whatever description, that I live in relationship to my own history. when we say bless us with hope for tomorrow, that includes bless us with tomorrow. And that's something we can all ask together. Bless us with hope for tomorrow. Bless us with love for today. To not forget faith in ourselves and faith in each other, hope for the future, and love as the pervasive dynamic wherever we are right now. And to remember that the divine has something to do with all that. Whether you cast a spell or do a meditation or recite a prayer, there's you, there's the divine, there's us, and we're all in this together. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be.